The Washington Commanders are up to 12 external free agents coming in, including veteran quarterback Marcus Mariota. But I'm going to tell you why that does not mean the Commanders should trade Sam Howell. That and more coming up on today's episode of Locked On Commanders.
Your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And welcome into this episode of Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast covering the Washington Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day every day. And don't forget that you can subscribe for free on YouTube or wherever you're listening to this podcast. And you can continue this conversation with me by becoming a Locked On Commanders insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders and sign up today. You'll get news, analysis, one-on-one conversations with me via text message. No hashtags, no apps, no filtering. All of it's coming straight to you with as much up-to-date information as I can give you. And we have some laughs over there. I think some of the insiders are finding out that I'm not super insecure about myself. I'm willing to laugh at myself. And of course, over the last couple of days, there have been some moments that we've had some fun with. So if you want to get in on that fun, become a Locked On Commanders insider, go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders and text me today. I'm David Harrison, credentialed member of the media covering the Washington Commanders for CommanderCountry.com. A part of Sports Illustrated's FanNation, here with you every Monday through Friday, along with our everydayers. And as always, greatly appreciate your continued support for the show. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, use the promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. On today's episode, you're going to hear from new Commanders tight end Zach Ertz, officially official, and we met with him on Tuesday via Zoom. So you're going to hear a little bit of that press conference here on the episode, and then we're going to talk about everything that's going on with the Washington Commanders, 12 external free agents that they're bringing in, the numbers that we know, the numbers that we don't know. But we're going to start this conversation off with how Marcus Mariota is sparking the conversation that perhaps Sam Howell could be or even should be traded by the Washington Commanders. So on Tuesday, one of the numerous moves that was announced, agreed upon contracts that, again, cannot be signed until Monday afternoon, evening, 4 p.m. Eastern time at the earliest on Wednesday. But deals can be agreed to, and that's basically what we're talking about. All these deals are agreed to. None of them are official until they're official. Marcus Mariota, however, veteran quarterback, one of those deals that was agreed to on Tuesday afternoon. And again, as soon as the news came out, immediately on NFL Network, on Twitter, on pretty much every platform you can talk about football, people started talking about whether or not you should trade, or the Washington Commanders should be or will be trading Sam Howell. And first of all, let's talk about who Marcus Mariota is and why his signing is sparking this conversation. So Marcus Mariota, number 2 overall pick in the 2019 NFL draft by the Tennessee Titans, coming out of the Oregon Ducks program. He started games in Tennessee for most of his first 5 years in the NFL. Then he spent 2 years with the Las Vegas Raiders, had no starts for them. 1 year with the Atlanta Falcons. He was the starter initially, went 5-8 as a starter in 2022, and was eventually benched for Desmond Ridder, who has gone on now himself to be benched a couple of times for Taylor Heineke. And now Kirk Cousins is in there in Atlanta to take over the reins there. He was the backup. Marcus Mariota was the backup to Jalen Hurts in 2023 with the Philadelphia Eagles. And that is where his Commanders connection comes in, because that is where he worked with assistant head coach and offensive pass game coordinator Brian Johnson, now obviously with Washington. So overall in his career, Marcus Mariota is 34-40 as a starter. Most importantly, though, he has been in the league for 9 years. He's been through ups and downs. He has some playoff football. He's had moments where the Titans thought he was going to be the future of their franchise forever, and then obviously basically run out of town, all those things. And then he's been somewhere, just been the humble backup, got another chance to start. Things did not end on all that well for him in his time with the Atlanta Falcons, but he turns 31 in October. So a lot of experience. He's been through a lot of NFL experiences, a lot of professional experiences, and that's really where this whole thing comes to a crossroads, right? Those are the two most important parts here. He is here in Washington to mentor a young quarterback. Sam Howell is not in a position to mentor a young quarterback, and honestly, Sam Howell shouldn't be worried about mentoring a young quarterback. So supporting another quarterback, just like he did Carson Wentz, just like he did Taylor Heineke, just like he was ready to do with Jacoby Brissett, sure. But he's not here to mentor a guy. He's still young himself. He's still trying to develop and grow into being an NFL quarterback that can start and lead a team. Marcus Mariota can be a mentor to a young quarterback. Now, Marcus isn't also, and then the other part of this conversation that has people wondering if the team is going to, or saying the team should even trade Sam Howell is, Marcus Mariota is not signing with a team to be a number 3 overall quarterback or a number 3 quarterback on a depth chart, right? Like Marcus Mariota, his days of being brought in to be the man probably well beyond, never say never, I guess, Geno Smith of the world and all that stuff. But I don't think Marcus Mariota's day of, becoming a starter again or being brought in to be a starter again are really coming. He's definitely coming in to be a backup. But is he to the point where he's coming in to be the number 3? I don't think we're quite there yet. And he's being paid $8 million. And again, we don't know the actual hard figures on that yet, but the report is up to $8 million on his contract. And again, you're not typically doing that to be a number 3. If Marcus Mariota was going to have to take a deal to be a number 3 quarterback, you figure it's probably not going to come in the first wave of free agency. That's probably something that comes in the second wave of free agency next week or even the week after that. So if Marcus Mariota is coming in here to be the number 2 quarterback, then that means, in theory, either the Washington Commanders are going with Sam Howell as their starter and they're just not telling anybody, or they're drafting a quarterback in the first round, which is what everybody assumes that they're going to do. And that's why this conversation is coming up, because if you're drafting a quarterback in the first round to be your starting quarterback, you're bringing Marcus Mariota in to be the mentor, backup, veteran to the young rookie first-round draft pick quarterback. And then what are you doing with Sam Howell? If Sam Howell's not the number 2, is he going to be your number 3 with 18 regular season games of experience? And there's two sides to that conversation. A quarterback with that much experience being your number 3, a lot of people almost say he's a waste sitting on the bottom of your roster when you could trade him and get a draft pick or 2 from him or in exchange for him that you could then turn into other players on your roster. That's one side. But the other side of it is, are you going to have that lording over? And look, I know that this offseason there have been plenty of vocal people, especially in the Commanders fan base, who have said the team needs to move on from Sam Howell. I get that. But believe me, I see it in my numbers. I see it in some of my DMs. I see it in some of my text messages from insiders. And I see it in the likes on episodes that we talk about Sam Howell potentially sticking around and being the starter. There are still plenty of people who want to see Sam Howell succeed, and still plenty of people who would love to see Sam Howell succeed as a starter in Washington. So do you want to keep that in the organization? You're a new head coach, you're a new GM, you're starting your organization over, you bring in this rookie quarterback, he goes out there and starts to struggle for the first 4 or 5 games. Is this fan base going to start calling for Marcus Mariota? Or are they going to start calling for Sam Howell? Even if he's the 3rd quarterback on the depth chart, who is this fan base going to start calling for? I think my prediction would be they're going to start calling for Sam Howell if that quarterback gets off to a rocky start, more than they are going to start calling for Marcus Mariota. So that's another part of this equation. Now, I would basically just tell you that if you've got a quarterback in your room, first-round draft pick or not, who's so mentally fragile that if the fan base is starting to call for him to be benched for another quarterback, it's going to make him tank even worse, then maybe he's not the guy for your franchise. Now, the other part of this conversation is the quarterback trade markets, right? Justin Fields was expected to fetch the Chicago Bears a 2nd-round pick minimum, right? There were some conversations that maybe a late 1st-round pick from one of these teams or something like that, but he was supposed to get the Bears a 2nd-round pick at the least. And then, the real bottom floor was 3rd-round pick that was, contingent on some factors that could become a 2nd-round pick. But he hasn't been traded. And the assumption out there is that the Chicago Bears are not getting what they thought they could for him. Mac Jones just went for a 6th-round pick, and he was a 1st-round pick by the New England Patriots. So we go back to 2022, and there are some teams that had day 2 grades on Sam Howell, right? 2nd or 3rd round grades on him. But those teams largely went after veteran quarterbacks. Washington brought in Carson Wentz. Denver went and got Russell Wilson. Cleveland went and got Deshaun Watson. Indianapolis, Matt Ryan. Pittsburgh brought in Mitch Trubisky, and then they drafted Kenny Pickett. So if those are the teams that were really kind of interested in Sam as a day 2 prospect back then, well, Washington obviously is not going to be able to trade for him because they already have him. Denver is under a different regime than there was there back then. Cleveland still has Watson, and they just signed Jameis Winston to be their number 2. Indianapolis has Anthony Richardson. Maybe they would be willing to trade for Sam to be their backup for him. But either way, that's still a backup situation. Then Pittsburgh just brought in Russell Wilson, still has Kenny Pickett. So that seems like a situation. So there really only seems to be a couple of options here for teams that might be willing to realistically trade for Sam Howell. The New England Patriots have come up, but they just signed Jacoby Brissett. And I don't know if they're going to sign Jacoby Brissett to bring in Sam Howell to compete with him again. That would be kind of a messed up situation for Jacoby. So, here's what I think the best course of action is for Washington. I think the best course of action for Washington is you keep Sam. If you're going to draft your young quarterback in the 1st round this year, you draft him. Go ahead, draft him. You bring Mariota in, you bring Howell, you bring in that rookie, probably Jaden Daniels, and you let all 3 of those guys compete. Find out if your rookie is ready in year 1. If he is, great, put him out there. If he's not, then decide. Is it Sam Howell? Is it Marcus Mariota? My money would be on, if you have to decide between those 2 to be a starter, you're probably rolling out with Sam Howell. If you start the rookie and you want Mariota as your number 2. You keep Sam on your active 53-man roster. You dress him as your third emergency quarterback, and you never know what happens in this league, man. Look at Anthony Richardson. He got injured. Marcus Mariota doesn't have the cleanest medicals in the world. You may need Sam Howell to climb from your number 3 spot to your number 2 or your number 1 sooner than you might expect. So if I'm the Washington Commanders, I'm holding on to Sam Howell until I have no reason not to. And right now you have every reason in the world to keep him. So that's my take on it. Let me know what your take is on it. Looking forward, now we're going to talk about the rest of the 12 free agent additions the Washington Commanders are bringing in. That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode and this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. What's the first thing that you would do if you had an extra hour in your day? Maybe you'd go for a run. Maybe you take a nap or read a book. Maybe you go see a friend in need that you know has been down for a little while. Whatever it is, a lot of us spend our lives wishing we had more time. The question is, time for what? If time was unlimited, how would you use it? Well, the best way to squeeze your special thing into your schedule is to know what's important to you first and foremost, and then learn how to make it a priority. Therapy can help you find what matters to you the most so that you can do more of it. And if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You simply fill out a brief questionnaire. You'll get matched with a licensed therapist. And if it doesn't click, if it doesn't work and you want to change, you can do so at any time for no additional charge. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Continuing on now with today's episode of Locked On Commanders. Thanks again for making Locked On Commanders your first listener, your first view today and every day. Make sure you come back tomorrow. We're going to continue our conversation. Some of these moves are going to be made official, and you never know, there'll be even more coming. Maybe a trade for a quarterback. Maybe Sam Howell gets traded on Wednesday. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. So make sure you check out Locked On Sports today. It's here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with your local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single league. So go to Locked On Sports today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Now we're going to move on to the rest of the free agents that are being brought on by the Washington Commanders. Again, the only one that is officially official right now, tight end Zach Ertz, who you're going to hear from here in just a little bit. But the rest of the list, the other 11 free agents that have agreed to deals with the Washington Commanders, which of course can become official tomorrow starting at 4 p.m. Eastern time. Defensive end Dorrance Armstrong coming over from the Dallas Cowboys. Center Tyler Biadasz coming from the Dallas Cowboys. Linebacker Frankie Louvu from the Carolina Panthers. Running back Austin Eckler from the Los Angeles Chargers. Kicker Brandon McManus coming from the Jacksonville Jaguars. Guard Nick Allegretti coming from the defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. Defensive end Cleveland Farrell coming from the San Francisco 49ers. Marcus Mariota coming from the Eagles. Defensive end Dante Fowler coming from the Dallas Cowboys. Long snapper Tyler Ott coming from the Seattle Seahawks. And safety Jeremy Chin coming from the Carolina Panthers. Now, we talked about the first batch of these players ending with Austin Eckler on yesterday's episode. So let's talk about the rest of the guys that got added on Tuesday or late Monday night. Kicker Brandon McManus. He is an older kicker, so he's going to replace Joey Sly. But Brandon McManus is an older kicker. And I'll tell you, I've told you again now every day, as you might remember this, if you go back through Adam Peters' history with the Niners, the Broncos, the Patriots, there is a track record of kickers and punters being drafted in the mid rounds of the NFL draft, like third, fourth, fifth rounds of the NFL draft. So don't wipe kicker off your board of potential positions that this team could draft this year in the middle rounds. I don't know. I haven't honestly done a lot of studying on the kicker specifically, but the fact that they did not bring back the younger Joey Sly and brought in an older Brandon McManus, even though McManus, I think it was like 86% on field goals last year, pretty good numbers from him. To me, it's a little sus, and I kind of think that, the Commanders might be a little bit of a surprise candidate to take a kicker somewhere in the middle rounds, depending on how good these kickers are in this year's class. Offensive lineman Nick Allegretti, a lot of people have kind of talked about him, career backup and all these other things. And look, he's a Super Bowl champion, so you like that pedigree. You've probably heard the story by now. Had a UCL injury in his arm. I can't remember which arm it was, but had a UCL injury in his arm and one of his elbows. And basically played right through it, completely played an entire Super Bowl with it, didn't come off the field. So super tough guy and all that stuff. Is he a lock to be a starter? Not necessarily, but I think he's at least a solid addition to the group. You look at Sam Cosmi, you look at Tyler Biadasz, you look at Ricky Stromberg, you look at Nick Allegretti. I still think Braden Daniels should be moved inside to guard and not out at tackle. So if you put him in there as well, and then who else, whoever they add in the rest of free agency or the NFL draft, I think you're at least bringing a guy who's going to compete. And if somebody beats him out for the job, they're going to have to beat him. He's not going to just give it up to him, right? That's kind of the way I see Nick Allegretti right now. Defensive end Cleveland Farrell is interesting. Originally a fourth overall pick of the Las Vegas Raiders. I think they were still in Oakland at the time. This was Mike Mayock's first draft pick when he left the broadcast booth and went to the general manager's office for the Raiders to, work with John Gruden and all that stuff. And a lot of people were shocked at the pick. He didn't work out with the Raiders. He ended up with the 49ers. Now, obviously, Adam Peters knows him from there. So, if Adam Peters is wanting to bring him to Washington, there should be a reason for it. I haven't been super impressed by Cleveland from what I have seen. I haven't done a deep dive yet on any of these guys, and we will do that coming through here the rest of the offseason. But, I've always kind of thought Cleveland would be better standing up. Now, the Dallas Cowboys defense, when you look at them, they did do a lot of odd front stuff and 3-down linemen, 1-down lineman. And if you do that kind of stuff and allow Cleveland to play from a stand-up position where maybe he gets a little bit more runway, gets a little bit more opportunity to counter what the offensive line is doing, then perhaps that can work out. Mariota, we talked about. Fowler is a solid piece from the Dallas Cowboys as well. Long snapper Tyler Ott has ties with the Commanders' new special teams coordinator, and then safety Jeremy Chin, kind of a box safety. I don't know if Derek Forrest, if he's healthy, maybe he comes back and he's that coverage safety, or certainly the Commanders could go out there and draft a coverage safety in April as well. But Jeremy Chin expected to be a buddy of mine who covers Carolina Panthers described him as fierce. So that's a good way of looking at him. Looking at some current cap numbers, over the cap currently has the Washington Commanders sitting at $75.56 million in cap space. So we're still missing hard contract numbers on a lot of these guys. So that's not going to be the amount of cap room they actually have. Insiders, you all got the cap information, contract information that is available sent to you. So you have that. Now, assuming that everyone who has agreed to a contract with the Commanders actually goes through and signs that contract, the Washington Commanders will have 61 players on their roster at that point in time. They've got 9 draft picks coming up. That takes you to 70, which means you're still 20 players shy of a 90-man roster. Now, certainly UDFAs and all that stuff are going to fill in a good portion of that as well. But the Washington Commanders, you can assume, are going to bring in at least another, 5 to 10 players in free agency, whether that's in the first, second, or third waves or post-draft wave, whatever it is. So a lot of people with a lot of opinions. Some people wanted the big guys, the big signings. Obviously, I wanted a guy like Patrick Queen, Daniil Hunter, is someone that we talked about. They're unfortunately going to other teams. But I was asked by Insider Tia. Insider Tia came through, saying, in your opinion, is this club handling this free agency thus far? How is this club handling free agency thus far? Be brutally honest. And I will tell you right now, brutally honest, I like what they're doing. But it's important, I think, to be clear on why I like what they're doing. I like what they're doing because I don't think that they're rushing this thing. And the phrase I like to use is rushing to failure, right? Now, your long snapper's your long snapper, your kicker's your kicker, right? But they've signed essentially, so call it 10 mid-level players that are going to come in. They're all going to be contributors. How many of these guys are going to be all pros? How many of these guys are going to be Pro Bowlers? Honestly, possibly none of them. But what you're really doing is you're kind of fleshing out the meat of this roster. So you're kind of going through here and you're bringing in your supplemental pieces, and then you're going to build your roster through the NFL draft. Now, even though we don't have all the numbers, this team is still going to have over $50 million left in salary cap. And really what that's going to allow this regime to do is, after this 2024 NFL season, you're going to look at who you brought in, you're going to look at who you retained, you're going to look at your results and your team, and you're going to be able to figure out, here's the direction we want to move at all these position groups and all these places. And we've got over $50 million and a whole new year's worth of draft capital to do it with. And to me, that is a very smart way of going about it. I kind of did that myself with my own mock offseason, right? I signed 5 or 6 free agents, but I did that because I went a little heavy on a couple of them, right? I brought in Patrick Queen, I brought in Daniil Hunter. So I spent a lot of money there. So I had to go mid-level with the others. And that's the route that I went because I want to bring a little bit of star power. Boom, up front. Let's get guys that we know are good and solid, and then let's build the rest out in that mid-level portion. What the Washington Commanders are doing in real life is they're building out the much heavier, right? 12 people instead of 5 or 6 mid-level portion of their roster, and leaving a good amount of money so that next year, if they feel, look, if this team wins 10 games, 11 games with this mid-level nucleus, the guys that they're retaining and the draft picks they brought in, then maybe next year you see them go from 50 million plus in salary cap space to 20 to 10. You know what I mean? They go out there and they sign a couple of big name free agents to really try to put them over the tops. Plus, you look at their needs, and right now, I think when I look at their roster, I could say you could use a wide receiver. You need tackle help. You could use another linebacker. I wouldn't hate another cornerback, and obviously you got to figure out your starting quarterback position. But that is not as many needs as we came into the offseason with. So if you're an opposing GM in the NFL draft right now, looking at the Washington Commanders, you can't pinpoint and say, outside of maybe number 2, you can't pinpoint and say this is exactly what Adam Peters has to do. And every GM will tell you that is part of their objective in the offseason is get to April to where your other GMs around the league can't just say, you have to do this. I know you have to do this. So if I want to do it too, and I want to do it ahead of you, I know I need to get ahead of you in this spot. So I think he's doing a very good job. I think this team is doing a very good job. Again, doesn't promise wins, but I do like that they're being smart. They're being judicious. They're bringing a lot of contracts in that they can get out of easily or expire easily or early. And they're not locking themselves into some bad contracts that could potentially doom what they're trying to do 3 years down the road. So that's how I look at this initial wave of free agency for the Washington Commanders. It all started with tight end Zach Ertz. So you're going to hear from him coming up next on this episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Commanders is brought to you by Game Time, who says you shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Game Time is the fastest and easiest way to buy tickets for all your sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. They've even got last-minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals, all kinds of stuff that make it easy to find and buy tickets for anything going on in your area. In fact, Game Time is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of events and even an hour after some of them start. It is the place for you to find your last minute seats. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, use the promo code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Back now to wrap up Locked On Commanders here on Wednesday, and we're going to do so by hearing from new Washington Commanders tight end Zach Ertz.
Adam Peters, Dan Quinn, and Cliff Kingsbury are pretty much the main reasons that I'm here. These are guys that I truly believe are going to build long-term success at this place, and it was an opportunity that I couldn't pass up. Obviously, I love playing for Cliff in Arizona. He's a guy that was one of the best offensive minds that I had been around up to date, and I still feel that way. So I'm extremely excited to get back into his offense and also just help this team, help this organization kind of build success from the ground up.
What is it about his offense that you like so much?
I mean, I think the job of any really good coach is to put the players in position to be successful, and no one does that better than Cliff, in my opinion. He wants to put his guys in positions to make a lot of plays, whether it be running the ball or throwing the ball and catching the ball. He's going to do everything he can to put his guys in positions to be successful, and he's one of the best I've been around in that regards. Obviously, it's very, very early in the process, so I can't wait to see what he does with these quarterbacks, and I would say whoever else we bring in.
Zach, Sam Fortier with the Washington Post. Welcome to D.C. What do you expect for your role here?
Yeah, I mean, I think my role is to make plays on the field and be a leader off the field and on the field for this team. Obviously, this is my 12th year in the league, so I've been around this league for a long time. I kind of understand my role, and kind of what they presented to me was to kind of just do what I do on the field, hopefully get open for the quarterback, and my job is to try and make their job as easy as possible. So that's the role that I expect, and it's up to me to go out there and execute, to be healthy, to go out there and make plays for this team, and that's what I'm excited to do.
Hi, Zach. Nika Javala with the Washington Post. As you were kind of made this decision, I mean, how many other opportunities were you kind of weighing at the time, and what, aside from Cliff, really appealed to you about what Washington is doing right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously there were a bunch of teams that were interested in signing me, not only once free agency started, but even going into last season when everything happened in Arizona. But I didn't want to jump into anything just to jump into something. I wanted to evaluate all the options and make the right decision, not only for myself, but as but for my family as well. Obviously, it's not just a decision for Julie and I anymore. We have an 18-month-old boy at home, and so the decisions are much bigger than myself. But at the same time, the reason I'm here is I believe in this place. I believe in the ownership. I believe in the head coach. I believe in the GM. I believe in the OC. I look at the skill group, and I think this is a group that can be extremely talented, a group that could be extremely hard to defend. And obviously, I can give 1,000 different cliches about why I think we're going to be good, but at the end of the day, it comes down to putting work in on the field and on the practice field and getting better, because no player should be where they are today by the time the season starts, or by the time when as a team, as a player, you always want to be peaking at the right time and improving constantly. And I'm not a guy that is going to sit up here and say I'm a finished player. There's always something I can learn. There's always something I can get better at. So I'm excited about doing that.
Zach, it's clear that the coaching staff, the different coordinators are picking guys that they've worked with before. What is it about Cliff that allows Zach Ertz to do what he can do?
I mean, I think there's more to just familiarity. You're not just going to sign someone because you know them in the past. Obviously, they truly believe that I can be a difference maker for this team. And I think I've shown that over the past decade, per se, in this league, that I can offer a lot to an offense and to a quarterback. And so I'm just excited to have that opportunity again. Obviously, the past year has been extremely tough, physically, mentally, emotionally. It didn't go as I wanted to in Arizona. But I would say I have a big chip on my shoulder, and I'm excited about this season.
And you have obviously been in the division and seen what Commanders have done over the years, and that fan base, they are starving for a winner, for sure. I can smile on your face. You know what they've been through. From the outside looking in and now on the inside, what have you seen about this franchise and this fan base?
I mean, playing here so many times, I think it's been 10 times I've played here, essentially. When this team is rolling, the fans are amazing. And ultimately, it comes down to us to put a product out there that the fans can get excited about. And it's not something where you just, I would say, flip a switch and the results are going to be there. It's going to come through hard work and grinding on the practice field and in the weight room, and getting guys to be at their best. And playing here when this place is rolling and loud and they believe in their team, it's extremely difficult to play here. So I'm excited to be on this side.
Hey, Zach, Scott Abraham, ABC7. Welcome to D.C. Obviously, you've had a lot of success in the NFL, and you just mentioned you have a chip on your shoulder. Is there a part of you that feels like you still have something to prove?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always. I've never felt like, hey, I've made it. We won a Super Bowl. I didn't feel like we made it. I have the record for catches in a season by tight end. I didn't feel like I made it. I feel like if I've ever lost that chip, I feel like I should have retired at that point, or left, or done something else with my job status. Because I feel like I have a lot to prove in this league. I still feel like I can improve as a player, and I'm gonna do everything I can to make sure that the DMV is getting my best this year, and it's something I'm extremely excited about.
You know, as we speak right now, we don't know who the starting quarterback is going to be for the Washington Commanders for this upcoming season. How do you view this situation, and how can you maybe be part of the solution?
Yeah, obviously I have no idea what the decision is going to be. Building a team is a 365-day-a-year job, so whatever they do today may not be the final verdict come September 10th or whenever the first game is. But at the end of the day, my job is to be open and create separation and make the job as easy for a quarterback as possible. And that's something that I've prided myself on, and something that I hold myself at a high standard too, is being able to get open and create separation for the quarterbacks to make their job easier. And so part of the success of the quarterback is obviously on them and their individual talent and their, I would say, commitment to the team and to the process, but it's also on us as receivers and tight ends and running backs and O-linemen to make their job as easy as possible. And so it's not only about the quarterback. Obviously, they get a lot of praise and a lot of blame, but it's a full team 11-man sport, and that's why this sport's the best to play.
All right, that was new Washington Commanders tight end Zach Ertz. You did not hear my two questions in there because honestly, the questions I had for him were already asked by the time I came up to ask questions. So I asked a couple of Eagles questions, sent them over to my publisher, CommanderCountry.com, also owns the Philadelphia Eagles site. So I asked a couple of Eagles questions, sent the answers that he gave me over to those guys so they can write them up. But A lot of good Washington Commanders stuff in the press conference. Again, you can catch the entire press conference on the Washington Commanders' own YouTube channel if you haven't already, and you can hear my Eagles questions if you're really interested in them. Actually, one of them is kind of funny because I accidentally called Jason Kelce, Travis Kelce, one of the things that the insiders and I were laughing about on Tuesday afternoon. In the meantime, or come back tomorrow, we'll have more conversations about free agency, what the Washington Commanders are doing, what they haven't done, what they need to do moving forward. In the meantime, if you got questions or comments, throw them in the YouTube comment section or text me directly as a Locked On Commanders insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders. Don't forget, make sure you check out Locked On Sports Today, the first ever 24/7 live streaming sports channel on YouTube. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day, every day. Every day, thank you for coming through on a regular basis like you do. Until we speak again, please, if you're out and about, be safe, be kind, and I'll see you next time for another episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.